inability of raising men, honestly, has created a much bigger problem. With men, we're not allowed to cry. We're conditioned to be strong. We're conditioned to be, we're not conditioned to be vulnerable. And so we're raised by parents, men and women. Our mothers, our fathers, they teach us to be strong. And so when we grow up actually dysfunctional.
So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action. Carl Joshua Ncube.
Yes.
Welcome to the 20th Avenue podcast, brother.
Yes, thank you.
Nepotism at its best.
I know, we're trying to help each other.
Yeah.
For the Ncube clan.
For the Ncube clan.
That's how we roll.
Yeah. You're one of the most traveled comics in Africa.
Right.
Yeah.
Until COVID happened, then I wasn't the most traveled comic in Africa.
Yeah.
I was just grounded.
You're just grounded?
Yeah.
So this is the only time that you've managed to travel?
Yes.
Okay. So let's get straight into business.
Yeah.
How do you manage to be relevant in all these countries? Because you've performed in all the continents in the world. How do you manage to be relevant as a comic, as a public speaker?
Yeah, so how to remain relevant as an African comic? Mm-hmm. I think the first thing is that there was a certain amount of luck that was happening because comedy in Africa hadn't become a thing. There were comedians in Africa, but African comedy hadn't become a thing. And I think I existed in a space where it took me about 10 years studying my dad, who was a stand-up comedian. So I wanted to manage him. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't get to manage him because he died, unfortunately, before I could implement my plan. Yeah. And so moving to Africa was part of a plan that I wanted to introduce my dad to introduce him to comics around the world. We had been watching comics around the world. Patrick Salvador in Uganda, Eric Omondi in Kenya, Basketmouth in Nigeria, Funny Face in Ghana, Trevor Noah in South Africa. Didn't get to meet Trevor, met the other comics that I've mentioned. So, it was one of those processes, sold my computer, sold my camera, traveled to meet these comics, and we started talking a lot more about how to build comedy in Africa. And I suppose that's part of the reason where I say luck played its place, because all of the comics were already thinking it. I just happened to be around as we were discussing it.
Okay. So like I know you probably studied in Zimbabwe. You as a comic, you research about the subject that you want to talk about and stuff like that. Yeah. Now for you to be relevant in South Africa, in Uganda, in Nigeria, in America, Australia, on a tour. Yeah. World tour.
One of the things that helped in also being relevant is sometimes people think because something bad is happening in your country means that your country is bad. Yeah. And that two different things. I think people are always interested in what's happening in your country. I have Robert Mugabe to thank for my comedy career, because if it wasn't for Robert Mugabe, there wouldn't be that curiosity about Zimbabwe. And so people wanted to find out the Zimbabwean story. And initially, I thought they wanted to find out just the negative part about Zimbabwe, but they wanted to find out about Zimbabweans. What was it like to be a Zimbabwean? Yeah. And I think my comedy was about being Zimbabwean. Like, how did I relate to the world issues, everything that was happening around the world? And I found comedy audiences started to gravitate more towards my content because I was talking about me as a Zimbabwean, which people were curious about. Because they'll be like, we know Robert Mugabe, but how are you Zimbabweans in relation to Robert Mugabe? And I found that became even more important as a story for comedy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm glad that you raised up that name. that
the name we shall not talk about. Yeah. Yes.
No, I'm just joking. Yeah. Back then we were scared of talking about Robert's name. Yeah. Yeah, on a first name basis. Yeah. Yeah. So scary. Talking of comedy and politics, how you guys how do you manage to keep it clean, so that how do you manage not to get into trouble?
Yeah. I think comedy has taken some time to get to this point. Mm-hmm. So when I started comedy, everyone was afraid that comedians were there to destroy governments and remove people from power, and to destroy marriages, and to destroy religion, and to destroy the idea of money, and to destroy all the systems that they know. Yeah. But it's only on understanding the fear of people that we were able to communicate to them that no, comedy is there for entertainment. We are an escape, not really a solution. And I think people get that twisted, because comedy is not a solution to your problems. It's just an escape. So you can't look at a bottle of alcohol and say, alcohol solved my marriage, or alcohol solved the politics, or alcohol solved the problem. It's an escape. It's a drug that is used by people to deal with fears. And so this is why you find comedians, it's started to enter this space where people would criticize us for some of the things that we say, as though we are the ones who created the very thing that they're complaining about. And yet we had nothing to do with it. We're talking about the things that you are struggling to deal with. So you can't look at like I said, you can't look at a bottle of alcohol and think it's going to solve your problems. That's the challenge with comedy. And so for the longest time we tried to let people know how alcohol works. You mix whiskey with Coke. You drink this much Coke with whiskey and it will cause this kind of effect. And when you explain a product to people a lot more, perhaps maybe in interviews such as this, people start to understand a lot more that comedy is not something, one, that you take seriously. It's also not something that you go to experience so that it solves your problems. Comics are not politicians. Comics are not the law. Comics are not constitution. Comics are not... They're not the thing that you think it is. It's just an hour show that you go there to forget what your problems are and to think about some issues, and then you figure out what you're going to do with, what we tell you.
So, in as much as comics are not the law or politicians have political privileges, especially when they're in the parliament. They can say whatever they want to say without getting judged or anything. In the art sector, I'm sure you guys as art practitioners, you also have your privileges. Now, is it not a matter of those government officials being stubborn, not wanting to accept the fact that you guys have your own privileges, and they want to punish you and coerce you from not saying stuff about them? Would you say so?
I think to a great extent there's even two types of politicians that you'll get. The politicians that will go to parliament, they'll exercise whatever constitutional rights that they have, and then there are those politicians who will go the extra side and usually to antagonize the government, and you usually find them getting arrested and all sorts of problems. It's the same with comedy. Sometimes there are comics that will go out and purely insult and will go to push certain buttons for a certain effect. And that works for some comics. Some comics go the other route where they're providing purely entertainment, which is why I'm a comic who believes that everyone in the room must be able to laugh at the joke. So if someone can't laugh at the joke, then as a comic, I may have failed in a way and I have to find another way of doing it so that everyone can laugh. It's not my intention to go and upset a person, but it's my intention to speak truth to power in a way that even the people in power can see themselves in a comical light. So there's different ways of doing it. I think for me, even my strategy, even with Robert Mugabe, was to make sure that I tried to perform where Robert Mugabe was. Because if I would get away with saying something directly to Robert Mugabe, then maybe the people around Robert Mugabe would not feel as bad. So, because I haven't met my current president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, for example, so I haven't met him to perform comedy in front of him. So I'm less likely to make a joke about Emmerson Mnangagwa until I have maybe met Emmerson Mnangagwa, make a joke about Emmerson Mnangagwa so that the people around him can do the same way that I'll do with opposition politicians, the same way I'll do with celebrities. But I've now just reached that level as a comic that my decisions are a little bit more informed before I make certain jokes. But certainly when I was a lot younger as a comic, I probably would have just gone out and just said whatever I wanted to say. But now I'm a little bit more measured. I have a brand to protect. There's corporates that are behind me. So even sometimes I don't even go into politics because most of the corporates will say to me not to make jokes about politics, or else I'll lose my endorsements. I'll lose a lot of different things that are of value to me financially.
So, fair enough. Moving to the society, outside politics now. Would you say that comedians actually, are you guys liberated? Does the society allow you to say everything about anything, about certain groups, about certain practices?
So what's become worse is that we used to worry about the politics, Now you're worrying about that random person in your comments, saying that you can't say something. So actually, a lot of the rights of the comics are being taken away by the public. The very public that told us to say whatever it is that we want to say. We can't say things now because the public will say you can't say that. And it could be anything, which is why it's important maybe as a stand-up comedian, I always say pick your audiences. So, for example, I used to feel like it was a safe space to talk on social media, but I don't talk on social media because majority of the people on social media maybe do not come to the comedy shows to understand the context. There are probably people out there just looking to get offended anyway by any joke that maybe touches on a certain group or group of people. But the very nature of comedy is to make fun of a person or a group of people in such a way that people understand what the joke is about, where it comes from, what the stereotype is. So comedy without stereotypes can't exist. Because, someone's going to get offended. Like if I make fun of someone from Botswana in Zimbabwe and someone from Botswana is in the audience and get offended, but they wouldn't be offended if I made fun of Zimbabwean in Botswana, but they wouldn't be pissed off if I made fun of the South African in Botswana or in Zimbabwe. So if they didn't make fun, if the South African is also going to get offended, then I shouldn't make fun of something in Uganda. The issue is like, so who do you make fun of? Who is qualified to make fun of who? To be honest with you, comedy is only there to highlight society's prejudice, present it as a mirror. So you can't watch a movie and say, that guy murders this girl, so therefore I'm against murder, so that movie should not exist. That's why entertainment exists, is to point out what's happening in society so that society can make better judgments in its dealings with each other. Like no one's killing each other because of a comedy show I've done. I'm merely highlighting why you shouldn't kill each other by highlighting a truth that exists in society so that you go out in public and don't do stupid things.
Okay. Mr. Ncube is ranting.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
What's your take on that Dave Chappelle incident?
Oh, which one? The Dave Chappelle with the tackling or like...
The first one. No, the tackling was the last one.
The last one.
Yes.
So Dave Chappelle being attacked for his show?
Yes.
Okay, so Dave Chappelle has taken comedy to a place where I think he has transcended what the art form of comedy is.
Yeah.
He is now bringing across those issues in their most raw form. So he's telling you stories that make you identify with the faults of the human condition. Dave Chappelle himself is not that person. He is the character telling you what's wrong with you, your prejudices, your line of thinking. So it's kind of weird when people get offended by Dave Chappelle, because you should have resigned to the fact that when you're watching his show, that he's a stand-up comedian. So what he's saying as a stand-up comedian is like saying I'm an actor. So how do you get angry at an actor acting out? Dave Chappelle writes his shows specifically based on the prejudices of the human condition. The same things that I've said is that you cannot get angry at a bottle of whiskey. The bottle of whiskey is there to take you to a place where you will think about something, and then you can then make a judgment based on what has been exposed out of that. So sometimes when we see you drunk, you're drunk because you drank the whiskey. Mm-hmm. So if you feel stupid out of a comedy show, it's because you watched the comedy and it highlighted an element of stupidity, of prejudice, of happiness, of sadness, of laughter, and brought it in such a way that you have to think about your own decisions in life. The comedian doesn't make that decision for you. Mm-hmm. You are the one who makes that decision yourself. The comedian simply highlights from a period of research, of watching the news, of reading the papers, of being intelligent, of knowing certain things. They've highlighted those things to you, like a mirror would, showing your face back at you. Don't break the mirror. Mm-hmm. You will still remain you. Even if you break the mirror 10 times, you will still remain you. So if another mirror is placed in front of you, you will still remain a reflection of what that mirror has shown you.
You're throwing bars, bro. I see your wife is looking at you like she's proud. She's like, that's my man.
Laughed.
All right. So I know a lot of young comics from across the world are watching this.
Yeah.
They're watching this. So Just a message to them. At which stage does one think of commercializing the art as a comedian? The art of commercializing it.
Yeah.
Because I was watching one comedian, I won't mention him by name. He says that you're the one who taught him that he mustn't attend an event if he hasn't been paid.
Wow. I think he might have gotten it the wrong way, right? Because I believe in the principle of get good, get seen, get paid, in that order. So get good at your craft. So if you stand a comedian, that laugh ratio is very important. How many times people are laughing per minute at your jokes is a very important thing, because when people laugh at your jokes, then you get seen. More people start talking about you, you start getting paid. A lot of comics, I think, before they've even gotten anywhere, they think I've got that one joke, and you think that's going to get you paid. It's a lot of hard work that goes into this craft. There's a lot of getting seen. There's a lot of gigs that you should be doing to make sure people know who you are. But at the back of your mind, you need to be thinking about the mechanics of how to get paid. How are you going to do that? How are you going to make sure that you're going to get the revenues that you're supposed to get? How are you going to be getting the gigs you're going to be doing? Like, there's a lot of comics who are putting a lot of content out there on social media, and there isn't a business plan to it. So, I mean, I saw that during COVID. Like, for 2 years, I saw people every day posting content, and just like, yeah, sure. So, yeah, you've got 250,000 likes, so you've got like 1 million likes, but is that revenue? You know, at the end of the day, you have to think of it this way. A person who goes out onto the streets naked can attract a crowd. That's not revenue. So, but a person can go out onto the street and can sell 3 or 4 products. That is revenue. Sales is revenue. That's all it is. There's no other argument to it. There's no other description about it. Are you selling a product? Are you getting money for it? I think that's very important. If you don't know how to get money for it, then figure out something you're good at. Make sure you get seen doing that so that you can get paid. And I think that's the only way that you can rise up the ranks or get that thing that you're looking for.
Okay. Still talking about the commercial side of things. Earlier on I mentioned that you're one of the most traveled comics. In an African comedian who has traveled the most. The most. Across the world actually. And you work with your wife. She's your manager. How do you guys manage to get those connections? How do you manage to get from point A to B?
I think my wife and I share a relationship where traveling around the world was not about the comedy. It was about our own personal happiness. What did we want to see? Which countries did we want to go to? What food did we want to eat? And what kind of relationships do we want to have? So I think a lot of people confuse that to be that my career is about comedy. My career is about my marriage. So that was my career. The comedy is what finances the marriage. The marriage is the business. So it's almost like like the asset that we're protecting is our marriage, and the comedy is the revenue stream that's used to pay for this asset. And so our line of thinking was to list the countries we wanted to go to and to list what we were willing to perform for. So sometimes it's not really about like the fee. It's more about what do you want to do? What brings you happiness? Like I would say, you want to make sure in chasing money that everything that you're doing makes you happy. Because when you make money and you haven't chased happiness, you're never going to be happy. You're going to be chasing the money, but you're never going to be happy. And so for us, we're like, most comics think you have to make it to travel. We started traveling from day one. You know, whatever amount of money we put, we traveled. If someone was giving us a lift to another country, we traveled. If someone was willing to host us, we traveled. If someone was willing to invite us, we traveled. If someone was willing to pay us money, we bought the air tickets and we traveled. If we ever earned money, we saved it and we traveled. The main thing was about traveling because we understood that that's what made us happy. We wanted to see the countries and wanted to stay together. And so even between myself and my wife, while she trained to be the best manager, I also trained to be the best comic. And somewhere in the middle, this is what delivered on the things that we wanted to do in our lives.
Okay. So before we leave comedy, I want us to talk about mental health. But before we talk about it, I understand you guys comedians are the most depressed people in the world.
No doubt. I mean, when it comes to depression and stand-up comedy, those are linked in a way. what you have to understand is, for me to tell a joke, I am absorbing everything you are observing at home, whether you're newspaper, in your relationships, stories. So I then take all those stories, I internalize them, I understand them, I'm empathetic. Then I have to write a joke out of your depression, out of the bad news, out of all the terrible things happening in the world. I have to write a joke. And quite often what happens is that some of those things intersect in a weird way. So you also have your own childhood issues, your own childhood trauma, your own, the problems are the same, I'll give an example. I'm talking about jokes to do with old age, and what are the signs of getting old. And then I notice all of the things are to do with me. I'm 43, and it talks about you start noticing you're getting old at 47. So I'm 4 years from discovering all the things that I'm supposed to experience, toilet issues, sexual issues, reproductive. There's so many different things that I'm dealing with, right? And then somewhere I'm dealing with taking on those statistics and then having to write a joke about it and do it for your entertainment so you don't feel so bad about what's happening in your own personal life. But that's happening to me as well. The reason why it's connecting is because I'm going through the same things you're going through. And so mental health is a huge thing. And I know, like, sometime last year, it sort of intersected in a bad way, in the sense that, started up a new company in rural development, and I was experiencing a lot of things from a business perspective, from a marriage perspective, from a personal perspective, from, growing up. And all those things come together, and then you have a mental breakdown, which is not an uncommon thing. But for stand-up comics, I think there's a part of reality where we go through this all the time. We just don't tell you. I think when we stand on stage and you're sipping on your alcohol and you're telling your story to the audience, somehow the audience disconnects from your actual pain. When you pay attention to all the comedy shows, Kevin Hart, Laugh at My Pain. What do you think that actually means? It's an actual confession by the comic telling you something about themselves. That's how they connect.
Mm-hmm. All right. No, well understood. So the reason why I want us to talk about men's mental health, we've openly come out to state that you're suffering from depression.
Yeah.
So here locally in Botswana, we've had cases of men, young men, grown men, hanging themselves.
Yeah.
And the recent case was about a few days ago. Oh. Yeah. So what is it about us men that makes us to feel so depressed? If we fail to open up, to talk to the society, to our family members and stuff like that? Why is it that we end up getting to those extremes of committing suicide and stuff like that? Because you've previously, like not today, but previously mentioned that you survived committing suicide once.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest with you, when it comes to men's mental health, I blame women. No, I'm kidding. But I'll explain why. I think an inability of raising men, honestly, has created a much bigger problem. With men, we're not allowed to cry. We're conditioned to be strong. We're conditioned to be, we're not conditioned to be vulnerable. And so we're raised by parents, men and women. Our mothers, our fathers, they teach us to be strong. And so when we grow up actually dysfunctional. And when you say strong, we look like strong structures, but we're very brittle at the base of it and how we're raised. And I'll speak personally from my perspective. The way that I used to view my relationship with women was that how I viewed love. I viewed love through sex. I would never view love through any gestures or anything like that. As my understanding was just that. My understanding about love was about loving the things I have, loving the money I have, or loving that, if I had a car, if you had a house or whatever. Those are the things that you think make you loved. Results, performance. Those are the things. But you then grow up and then you realize that there's little things that set you off that you don't really talk about. We put them into, you're supporting a football team and you're excited about that. You're excited about supporting Liverpool, but Liverpool depressed us for a long period of time. And there's a lot of other small things that were depressing us little by little. And Right now, as we're starting to express ourselves more on social media, we're starting to see a lot more that men have not been healed of a lot of childhood trauma. They don't understand why they get angry. They don't understand why they become abusive in the homestead. They don't understand why they run away from responsibilities and become absent fathers. They don't know why they can't deal with rejection at work, or they can't deal with women in the workplace, or they can't deal with losing a job. There's so many different things that men cannot deal with. And this is not an excuse. It's this just an explanation as to why we need to deal with this issue by talking. There's a reason why men must gather together, even go to the village and express their feelings about what they're doing. But no, what we do is we go to the village, we sit in a, what do they call it? Kotla. And we just talk while we're drinking, but we don't talk about things. We don't talk about sexual reproduction. We don't talk about impotence. We don't talk about erectile dysfunction. We don't talk about our inability to please our wives. We don't talk about our inability to relate to our kids. We don't talk about how we feel about our daughters. We don't talk about all of these things. End up with a lot of errant behavior, and some of that behavior leads to suicide, leads to domestic violence, leads to promiscuity, leads to drug abuse, leads to alcohol abuse. All of these things come about as a result of men not being able to talk. And I think comedy sometimes has offered men the space. When you hear a comedian talk about his own, say, erectile dysfunction, maybe you can crack the joke without feeling like it's a bad thing to talk about such a topic. And so those taboos, and so it's important to keep that comedy alive and not restricted, because it talks about very difficult topics. And we're finding a lot more comics starting to open up about some of these men's issues.
Would you say that in the African society doesn't allow men to open up?
Yeah, I think one of the problems that has existed in African culture that has stopped men from talking is the absence of a lot of the rituals that men used to go through. What fathers and their sons would do, what would happen when you turn 12, when women are very connected from an early age. And while people might actually criticize me for talking about some of these stereotypical things, but mothers would often have their daughters clean the house, cook, all the things that they would say women are supposed to do, teaching them how a husband is supposed to be treated, baby showers, kitchen teas. So many different things that women do. Whether the culture has changed from a colonial perspective, women still do a lot of the same things. Those things women are expected to do. You're supposed to do your hair, go to the salon, make sure you're looking nice, sew your clothes, cook, gather together. But men have done less and less over time. So you'll find, like, how many times do you see fathers with their sons, or events that are to do with fathers and their sons? Those things don't exist anymore. How many fathers teach their sons how to build a house? None. How many fathers teach their sons how to hunt? None. How many fathers teach their sons how to raise a homestead? None. So these things are not happening, and they're not happening at a larger scale. Men are getting busier. They are taking up jobs as CEOs, general managers, whatever it is, but those are not being passed down in tradition to sons. How many family-run businesses? Nothing. It's like a father and a son relationship is a non-existent process. So where in that process is a son supposed to learn what it is to be a man? Whether you take the stereotypical version of being a man or a person who's in tune with their feelings, none of those versions exist. So now we've got another version of man that's there that doesn't know where it exists, what it's supposed to do, how it's supposed to feel, and how it connects to the world, and how it even adapts to the world. Whereas women have seamlessly figured out how to do this.
Would you say as men we're weak, or would you say we are weak, or our society doesn't allow us to be weak?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't go as far as saying men are weak, but I think men are failing to find a balance.
Yeah.
They're failing to find a balance in their traditional value and their current value. Now, if they had taken the whole aspect of how women have evolved over time. They've evolved, but they've still retained being women for the most part. And men haven't. And that sense of balance, that sense of adaptiveness, which has been replaced by money, cars, and sport, or beer, or drugs, taking those things out and putting more traditional processes of what men are supposed to do, of how they're supposed to value their homestead. It's easy for a man to say that you're polygamous. But even in the true sense of being polygamous, right? There are certain traditional values that are supposed to be maintained in that process, and men still don't even understand how to do that. So from a traditional perspective, I would say that men are inherently become weak from an African perspective. But women have maintained, and I think maybe we need to go back and seek that kind of training from our mothers, from our sisters, from our wives, from our, to learn what it is to be a man once again, and seek and find that balance once again.
Okay. Yeah. No, okay, you can continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really, when I look at depression from a Zimbabwean perspective, there's a few thoughts. Maybe they're a little bit controversial. Take them as you would want to. But I think not every problem in Zimbabwe is solved by its politics. Not every problem is solved by its money. Not every problem is solved by your position in society. And I think a lot of the times we haven't looked at just some simple things, which is the man's ability to be able to go backwards. Just think backwards. You think about what it means to go rural, go off-grid. Think about growing your own food, raising, homeschooling and those kind of things. Like, we sometimes gravitate to the money thing, is to move away from the problem, which is to leave the country, to think that it's about money. So if you make money, then you are a terrible husband and father to your kids, because you can't really just blame everything on saying that it's the economy. We're not the first economy to collapse. We're not the first economy to have problems. There's been economies where people, there's a collapse in the economy and men still went out to go to war. Would you go to war? And I just think to a great extent our mental health issues stemmed way before any economic challenges that we had. And I think they just come from the fact that we didn't have processes. So if you look at from when you were born until you die, how many things did you go through that are traditionally for men to do? And you'll notice that we're doing a lot less. I remembered we used to have to make little footballs and play on the street. And there was a rite of passage that was there. You go to the rural areas, there's things that they will show you and things that you would do. But we don't do this anymore. Now, the kids are born, the boys are softer, they're playing video games. They're not, there's things that guys just don't do. But women still can manage to do a lot more. Yeah, I mean, we blame technology and whatever, but it's like women still come out like better cooks, and they're hairdressers. They're now in jobs, they're making a lot more money, and they're a lot more ambitious, and they're pushing for their rights, and they're doing all of these things, while men would just sit back and we're like, it's like, what are we actually doing? And this is, I think, the key to why we're losing our place, from a psychological perspective. I know personally, from a personal perspective, that is what has happened with me. So like I said, it's unpopular thought, but take what you want.
Mm-hmm. All right. So moving forward, because we can spend the whole day talking about this topic.
Yes, let's spend the whole day.
You one hell of a talented human being, multi-talented. Yeah, a whole faculty.
A whole faculty.
Yeah. We know you as a comedian. Yeah. We know you as a graphic designer. Web designer, motivational speaker, author,
chef,
celebrity chef. What is it that you don't do?
Wow, I okay. People say I do a lot of things, but I don't know how to drive.
I thought you recently got your license.
No, I don't know how to drive. I said I wanted to try to learn how to drive, but I lost interest altogether. I don't know how to drive. But just to explain why I do a lot of things, because I'm a polymath, and that's the only way to explain it. So a polymath is a person who just knows a lot about a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. But that's a way of describing it. But to the polymath himself, me, I don't look at myself as that I do a lot of things. I like look at me as like an oven, right? An oven can bake different things. It can do cakes, it can do steaks, it can do anything you want heat to be applied to. And that's what I do. I'm the same stove. I just do a lot of different things. But if you look at them, they all stem from creativity. So what does creativity require? Mm-hmm. It requires you to do research. Then you need to find the right tools, and you need to link that to the right audience. So these are the three things that I know, right? Is to curate, right? To find to find out everything I need to know. Then I need to collaborate to learn the right tools to use. And then I create, which is where I actually produce something that is new. And that could exist in a recipe. It could be a joke. It could be an article. It could be a film. It could be a documentary. But whatever it is, it's something that I have to create in order to meet a particular market. And so for me, I'm the same person. Like literally, I use the same laptop to create each of these things. So like even a recipe, I'll think about flavors. I'll do my research. I'll go to all these countries. I'll taste all of this food. And then I'll know instinctively how to create the right dish. It's the same with a joke. I literally do the exact same process. It's the same with graphic design. I literally do the same process. The same as any content I create. So in the end user says, oh, Carl, you're talented in a lot of things. But truly, God did not create us to do one thing. He's a God of many things. Mm-hmm. And so he created us in his image. So we should be many things. The same way, I'm speaking to the mother or the father who does your school run in the morning. That's logistics. I'm speaking to the mother or the father who cooks for their kids. That's being a chef. I speak to the person who's wasting their time on social media, commenting on everyone's posts. That's an author. And I'm talking to the person who's always recording selfies, right? That's film and television. That's content. Mm-hmm. I am just doing exactly what you do on a daily basis. I just monetize it. That's the difference. And I think that's where my actual gift is in the monetizing of my day-to-day things. That's what I do.
How do we get to monetize?
so monetizing what you do, I think is like raising kids. You have to give it time to grow. So it's like when you discover that there's something that you do for free and you want to monetize it. Mm-hmm. The day you discover it is like giving birth. So this is a child. The child needs to be raised, needs to be nurtured. So you need to understand everything to get good with that thing. Mm-hmm. You need to make sure people know it. Mm-hmm. And then you need to get paid. Mm-hmm. So, people always say stuff like expressions like, and I challenge them, like good things come to those who wait. Yeah. I like to think of it as good things come to those who wait. But to make money, you need to tell people where you're waiting. Because if you don't, then you're not monetizing. It's like you're almost waiting for nothing. Most of the times, you actually have to make a deliberate effort to make sure people know exactly where you're going to be with this thing that you want to sell. And sometimes it doesn't mean going far. Even just telling the people around you. You keep growing the circle. You tell your neighbors tell their neighbors, they tell their neighbors. That's how you build your influence. Starts off small, always gets big. I would say that's the way that you start monetizing anything that literally anything that you want to do. Even going to the toilet is monetized. Bill Gates, go look it up, is investing billions of dollars on people figuring out how to do a toilet that doesn't use water. So trust me, there's not a single thing on this planet that is waste. It's all relevant and it all makes money.
All right. Where do you find the time? We have 24 hours
in a day.
I assume your day is 28 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours. 24.
How do you manage to balance all these things? Versus the society.
Yeah, I think if you split your life into three piles, right? Yeah. Then you know exactly what you're supposed to do in life. So there's three things. If you wanna make sure that you go through your to-do list, mm-hmm. Write down 100 things that you want to do. Write down everything that you ever wanted to do. Make sure it's a list of 100 things. Mm-hmm. Then split those things into three piles. Mm-hmm. Things you can do. Mm-hmm. They don't require anything but you to do them. They don't require money. They don't require faith. They don't require luck. They require just you to do. You put that stuff into the you list. Then there's the list that requires money. Things that require money for them to happen. And you must know the exact amounts for each item. So if it requires you to get a visa, how much does that cost? If it requires you to open up a company, how much does that cost? You need to write that list of those things down. Then you need to write the third list, which is the most important list. The things that you believe that God, whatever you want to believe, God, the universe, luck, whatever you believe in, is what that requires. So these are things that are not in your control. Now, it's going to teach you three things. The first list, which is the you list, will teach you personal discipline. To wake up in the morning, get out of bed. That's what you can do. Wake up at 6 o'clock every day, get out of bed. That's the thing you need to do. Walk around the block, work out, run, eat healthy food. That's you. The things that money requires, which is to say, I need to register a company, I need all of this. It means that personal discipline of waking up in the morning, then you know how much it is that you need to raise. So you need to accumulate the money. So every time you get $2, you know you're putting away $1 to do what? That second thing. Then there's things that are not in your control. Your mother's health, your brother's health, your the economy, the stock exchange markets. These are things that are not in your control. You're not God. You're not there to. You're not going to save. You're not going to save your mom. You're not going to save your dad. This is God decides who lives and who dies. These are things that are not in your control. These are things you pray for, things you believe in. These are not the things that you get out of bed for. These are not the things that you pay the money for. And you need to be very disciplined in these things so that God can do what He does here. When God is doing what He does here, God is honoring this faith that you have in order to give you the resources to be able to pay for these things. So just remember those three things.
Okay. No, well understood. You spoke like a true motivational speaker.
Oh, it's three things.
Yeah.
Yes. I started with the feather. Now look at me.
Yeah. I wouldn't have done justice if I don't talk about your rural Airbnb project.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. So your product.
Yeah. So we decided when we were, my wife and I, we had paid so much rent in our lives. So from when we left school, we realized that we've been paying rent to the tune of close to 300,000 in rent, the two of us, from when we left home at 17.
Which currency?
$300,000 in rentals. Go calculate your own rentals. You'll be shocked at how much you've been paying. And so we decided that we were going to do a catapult effect, which was to move backwards before we move forward. So sometimes in order to move forwards, you don't have to run faster forwards. What you need to move backwards slowly. So we decided we were going to go live rural, but it wasn't going to be that easy. First, we went and lived in a tent. We started a tent business. Then we decided to convert a bus, and then we put it in the rural areas. And when we went to the rural areas, we decided to give ourselves a year to study the needs of rural Zimbabwe, because rural Zimbabwe makes up about 60% of our population. So we definitely believed there was a market there that was untapped. And so we came across this issue that visitors wanted to come to the rural areas, but they couldn't, because they couldn't understand how do you just travel to a random rural village. Like I'm in Botswana right now. I don't even know how to go to a random rural village. So I said, what if we created an elegant solution that allowed people to be able to visit African villages? And then we started to see that there was a huge demand. So we created an app called Rural B&B, which is like Airbnb, but for rural areas, which basically curates as many rural places that you can go to, collaborates with the villagers to create rural experiences, and then creates these unique experiences that people will pay money for that will definitely benefit opportunities for rural Zimbabwe. So we're just a think tank thinking of ideas of how to make rural areas, better. And so we've started this tour of going around, Africa, using my comedy and my cooking to travel around. And everything is coming together because comedy, I become a storyteller. My cooking allows me to create cooking experiences. And my graphic design allows me to create more strategic rural experiences that are out there. And so Rural B&B is basically that. Curated rural experiences for a modern, using a modern platform to allow people to have better experiences in rural Africa and not be ashamed of where we come from, actually.
Are the tourists buying into the idea?
Yeah. So being from Victoria Falls, a lot of tourists come to rural areas to experience the rural areas, but they've found great experiences with us. We've been lucky that we've had documentary and filmmakers come and actually visit our place to talk about the Zimbabwean rural. Plus, we've also had people come to our village, and we've had our village actually shown internationally on platforms where millions of people have seen it. So that is already an indication of how exciting this concept can be. And so we want to take it as far and as wide in the continent as we possibly can.
Okay. So who can be part of this project?
All right. So what happens with Rural B&B is that we are not the operators. What we do is we create a platform. And so we're encouraging everyone in Africa to go back to their roots, to their rural areas, to upgrade their rural homesteads to the standard that we set up on our website, right? Which is ruralzimbabwe.com, which will be rebranding soon to Rural B&B anyway. So we're basically taking the platform or our knowledge from a hospitality background and saying, here are the things that you might want to put in your rural areas. Post those videos and pictures onto our website. We'll go and we'll sell it to the world, and people can come and stay in your village.
Okay, it sounds like...
and it's free.
It's free?
It's free.
It sounds like a jackpot. All right, before we shut it down, Carl, I just want to pick your brain, bro.
Yeah.
What's your take on these new school pastors, celebrity pastors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, as a born-again Christian, I am finding it very difficult to sell religion. The minute you're selling religion and not solutions, then you are part of the problem. I don't think religion was ever for sale. It wasn't there to be paid for. If that was the case, then we would have, in every Bible, would have been given a price list. But there isn't one. And, for people to be selling a religion that has been written by other people and then trying to sell that as their own, for me, it's very difficult to subscribe to. And, everyone has their own personal beliefs. So I'm not one person to judge what you believe. However, I believe that Africa has a lot more solutions than listening to someone in a shiny suit and pointy shoes, to be honest. It just sounds a little bit weird. We have better advice that comes from our own ancestors that we can go with rather than, be paying all of these exorbitant amounts of money for people who just want to drive around shiny cars.
Yeah, what about flashing money, throwing money and stuff?
You see, so, that kind of thing, I think it's not in our culture. We have better values. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to go back to those values, and you might find those values will bring us closer to God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Culture Shwanube.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you here, bro.
Cool. No, it was good to be here. Sorry for not telling any jokes, but I don't have any right now.
No, jokes don't come from free. Yeah. Any shows coming up in Botswana?
Yeah. So my brother and I usually, we've been doing these traditional shows in Botswana, but COVID sort of stopped that. So I'm happy to be back in Bots because it feels like a family reunion. Mm-hmm. But we're now looking at how do we take this show even further. So while we're around for a show that's happening at the end of this on Thursday, we are thinking of doing something a lot more regular and expanding on the concept and seeing, what else can we do with this, because obviously this show is also in honor of our dad, who was also an entertainer, so it's like a celebration of him as well. So yeah, really excited to be back in Bots and excited to be doing a show this Thursday.
What about any mentorship workshops? Fields that you're in?
Yeah. So obviously, every time I travel, I always like to speak to a lot of young people and see how do we engage, how do we give advice. Always to take the opportunity out on my social media to do that. But it's a good idea. I would love to do more workshops. I've tried reaching out to some people, do some stuff with startups. I'm just waiting to get responses. But really, the objective is to be able to sit in a group of young people and also just tell them what my experiences have been in advertising as a chef, as a creative, and see how that also helps them, to develop.
Because a lot of local promoters in Botswana complaining. They say that when you come here, you just take your brother, you guys do your show, it's a family affair.
Yeah.
You don't interact with them and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, just to answer that, I do reach out to people, and it's weird that they only bring it up when I've already arrived, and I think by then we've already made plans. And I think it's always bad when someone gets in touch with you at the last minute when they know you exist every other day. So yeah, we're trying to get people into the mentality of, when I first send the email, please respond, because it's difficult to then respond when we're already here, because by then we'd have already made plans and people have committed, and a lot of the times it's out of my hands what we can do. So it's just an appeal maybe for people to say, usually we do reach out, we do ask, but people are not interested. But then once you put out a poster and then someone says, can we work together? You're like, well, by the time we've done a poster, we've made a lot of decisions.
Yeah, there's a gentleman called T-Sport. He's always crying every time when I tell him that Kawa's in the country.
Yeah.
He's a comedy promoter.
Right. No, but like it's funny. I say not speaking about anyone, but I mean, one of the things we're always putting out is just trying to reach out to people. You know, we want to do shows, we want to travel to bots, we want to travel to, you know, that kind of thing. But it's actually quite funny. As much as I put my number on social media, as much as I put my email on social media, in fact, people who get hold of me actually never struggle. Then I actually don't think anyone ever struggles to get hold of me. If someone just hits me up on an email, I'm like I'm even here. We even talked before, right? I'm not hard. I'm not hard to get hold of.
For me, they say because I'm in Ncube.
in fact, what people don't even know, I've been interviewed by more Ncubes for some strange reason. Even though we're not related. And then people say because I did an interview with Trevor Ncube as well. People was like, "Are you related to Trevor Ncube?" I was like, "No, we're not actually related." Then I met a lot of Ncubes were now in media, right? And a lot of us are not related. And so when people see us in the same content together and they're like, "Oh, it's because you guys are related." We're like, "It's weird. Actually, we're not. Actually, we just know each other's numbers." And then we get in touch with each other, which is cool.
All right. So in closing, can you please shut it down for us, Carl?
Yeah. Okay. What are we doing?
Just flex.
Yes, I'm just flexing, guys. So So I'm here to just check on my brother, who when we were young, I dropped him on his head by mistake, and so I just come to check if there's any brain damage, which he's fine. But besides that, now that we're now older, I now come to check on my brother because potentially he could be a kidney donor. So I need to be nice to my brother because I might need his kidney. So I don't want to, just in case. So anyway, so just keep my brother safe, and I'll come keep checking on him just in case I might need that kidney, bro. I might need the kidney, so just put it on the side. Treat it well. Yeah, no more castle lights.
Cool. Thanks a lot, bro.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a wrap.